Hi, everyone. I am so very excited to be talking once again with Marilyn Devonish. She has been a focus of our community group, sharing so much of her valuable insights to the practice of block therapy, as well now the paddle. We're going to be diving into some of her experiences, and she's also going to be asking me some questions about the paddle and about this whole process. So, Marilyn, thank you once again for coming live with me. I'm so very excited to have you here.
Deanna, always a pleasure. I absolutely love block therapy. It's been life-changing and body-changing for me. So absolutely delighted to be here.
So excited. So I know that you actually had reached out because now that we have this little guy in the world featured, the block paddle with the facelifter program, there's so much to talk about, so many questions to be answered. So do you want to dive in and start from there?
Absolutely. And I think the first thing I'm going to say is I'm a little bit naughty, as I often am with regards to things. When people go, "You're not supposed to use it like this," but I will. It has been so useful in so many different ways. So one of the things I'm interested in, because I know there's a very interesting story here, is how did this come about?
Well, it is kind of a funny story too, because about 3 years ago, I had created a pet program, fascia decompression for your fur family. And after I did this, my engineer came and presented me with this little guy and said, "What do you think about something like this for pets?" And as soon as I saw it, I thought, this isn't for pets, this is for the face. Like it's amazing because when we're blocking, we do block the face, and we've got incredible changes that can happen as a result of that. But because the landscape of the face is so intricate with the cheekbones and the eye sockets and all of this area under the jaw, as soon as I saw this, I knew that this was going to be a game changer to get to those really deep adhesions that are a little harder to access with the Block Buddy and Baby. So we started there, but now actually, probably as of September, we're going to be adding a whole bunch of paddle classes into our membership to address the entire body. This is next level deep stuff because of the shape and all of the different corners and contours and even the handle. We can really utilize this tool in so many different ways to get really deep to those areas at the root, all the way to the bone that, again, the Block Buddy might be a little more challenging to access.
Wonderful. I love it. And for me, the endy bit, I'm sure it's got a proper name, but the endy bit is just perfect because I had oh, so many things. But one of the things I was in a car accident when I was in my late teens. I must have been about 19, 20. I did all the right things. I went to hospital, went to A&E. They then gave me the neck brace, said wear it for a couple of weeks. And when you feel better, you can take it off. That's exactly what I did to the letter. And then about 5 or 6 years later, and I didn't put two and two together, I started getting real, stiffness and pains in my neck. And then I'd be mid conversation, and my jaw would just lock open, like I couldn't close it and be like, oh. And then eventually, my ear ended up on this shoulder and I couldn't move, and it was excruciating. So that was my first introduction to the connectedness of the body. And block therapy has been incredible in sorting some of those legacy things out that I could get them corrected, but they would just fall back in eventually. So, back and forth, back and forth. And don't get me wrong, all of the body practitioners I've worked with are incredible. I would recommend them any day of the week. And block therapy made it possible that those problems didn't keep recurring. And I know that with the paddle, oftentimes I might just be sitting and sort of, doing this and then doing the other side. And there's often a moment for me where it's like you hit a switch and it just goes, oh, and everything releases. And then it's just like this sense of space and freedom, and you just know you've hit the sweet spot. So for me, this is like a little bit of magic in your hand because, oh my God, I can't begin to tell you. And even when I'm sometimes just sitting, waiting up for a phone call and waiting for a Zoom to start, I'll just be like, get my little timer. And by the time the meeting starts, my face, and I know my body because I like to get into those nooks and crannies, and it's amazing. So I'm really delighted to hear that you've got a whole program coming up, because I know there's been a little bit of a change with this, because previously there's been that conversation that this is not a standalone product, that you must have done the block therapy beforehand in order to do this. Am I right in thinking there might be a few changes afoot with regards to that directive?
Yeah, there are. And the thing is, it's so important, first of all, from my perspective, that we always deliver things in a very safe and practical way for people. And the whole system of block therapy as a starter focus is really to teach people, first of all, how to release the adhesions in and around the rib cage. Because most importantly, with this practice, there's three parts. There's the creating the space, which we do with the tools. Then there's the inflating that space with breath, with blood and oxygen, so that these newly opened spaces, we can deliver that oxygen to those cells. And it's important before we start diving into the face that we understand proper diaphragmatic breathing, which is really the foundational part of block therapy. Also, understanding that there's cause sites to our issues. And because the head is at the apex of this entire structure, the patterning of the fascia in the feet, in the arms, in the entire body directly impacts what's going on in the face. So if we just take this tool and we don't have any past understanding of how to utilize or how to address the fascia throughout the entire body, we're not going to have the same kind of benefit, and it's not going to be long lasting. So very recently we changed it though. So we've actually added some of our starter program into the paddle program so that people have that and they don't need to start with block therapy before they get this, but there is parts of block therapy in this program just so people can have access to it and really optimize the benefits. So yeah, people can simply buy this program now and you're going to get a really lovely flavor of what block therapy is all about, using a rolled up towel or using the blocks, because that rolled up towel is actually very beneficial, and it gives you that really deep sense of what this work is about. It's the instruction that's the key. We really want to stay focused in a position while we connect to the breath, and we want to stay for that minimum of 3 minutes so that we can really optimize the melting of adhesion. And the towel does the job. The blocks definitely are a higher level of that job, but we can now offer this tool without people having to start with the starter program.
Which then opens it up to a whole new world of people, which I think is really exciting and amazing. And I have to say that, I mean, this one, hold on, I'm sitting on it. This one right here, the baby. I always laugh when I say the block baby because people think, oh, how cute. I'm like, this is vicious because it really gets into those nooks and crannies.
It
So
really
this one
does.
I always travel with, and nowadays I've just come back from where was I? Florida, and I got one sort of question, but now it just goes through customs because I think people must be seeing more of it. But before it was like a little mini interrogation. So I
Yeah.
just say block therapy, yoga block, so they get the gist of it. But I took this one on the plane this time. And so I had it this way. I put it under the thigh. So, top of the thigh, moved it down, then went to the other side. And then I put it behind my back again. So you get the height of it. I just put it under the shoulder blade and then moved it around and then did the neck and got into here and here. So it was almost, by the time I stepped off the plane, it was 19 hours from door to door. It was 19 hours. I felt as good when I got off the plane as I did when I left London. And I really think it's in part down to this, keeping everything moving. Because I remember back in the day, they had these special compression socks, that people used to wear on the plane. I've got a pair somewhere. But this, I believe, is like a dynamic version of that. And I felt amazing when I stepped off the plane after 19 hours of traveling.
I love that. I again just had an experience. I was in San Diego a few weeks ago, and I too took this on the plane with me, and I had it behind my back for probably 4 hours. I was working through my face, my neck. I had it under my legs too, and that's just it. When we're stuck in a position for so long and we can't really move our bodies, you're still able to move your body with your breath and with this intention of getting to those deeper adhesions. And the benefits are amazing. And I'm not a big fan of travel, but once I get seated and I know I have this tool, I get really excited because suddenly I have hours where I can't do anything else. So it's now like therapy time for Deanna when I'm on the plane. So I love that too. And yeah, it's just so easy and accessible, and we can again use it anywhere and everywhere. I always tell people, get creative with your body. Once you understand the tool rules, really, that your breath is your guide and that we want to stay in a position for a minimum of 3 minutes to really optimize the benefits, then you can play with your body and make it like this creative game to find those deeper pains, which is where the adhesions are, and really promote healing in such a simple, wonderful way.
And it is, and that's one of the things I've long since says the minute, I mean, gosh, Dr. Margot hounded me within an inch of my life to look at block therapy. She sent you seriously. She sent me, I think she sent me an email, and I was like, yeah, great, great, because I was just standing as for election as a what they call an elected official local councillor. I had no time, so she sent me an email, and then she sent me a text message saying, "Did you look at the blocks?" And I was like, "No, not yet." And then she sends me a WhatsApp. "Have you looked at the blocks?" And then she sends me something on Telegram, and I'm like, what is wrong with her? She said, "Marilyn, you're going to love this." And my God, did I love it. And within 21 days, a problem that I'd had with my ankle since I was around 7 years old, gone, sorted. And I've done years of physio on that thing. I still have the wobble board right behind me that I used for about a year and a half just to get a bit of stability back into it. 21 days. And at that point, when I first came across block, it just coincided with me being told I had osteoarthritis in my shoulder, which was a little bit of a shock to the system. I'm like, what, at my age? But it was 12 to 18 months of physio. That was the treatment plan. Or if that didn't work, then steroid injections. And if that didn't work, surgery. And my brain was just like, oh no, oh no, no, there's got to be something else. And I thought, well, I've got this block that's just arrived. Why don't I use this? Within 6 weeks, I had, say, I'm going to say I was 80% there. And within eight weeks, I was back to normal. And this is the anniversary. This is a 3-year anniversary because I started doing that in May. And by the end of June, 3 years ago, I was like, oh my God, my shoulder's back. I didn't do any of the things that were prescribed to me by the doctor, and did have an x-ray at the hospital. So I wasn't just guessing what was wrong. And so for me, block therapy has been an integral part. So when it came to the face, I'm like, ooh, because like you said, this is the thing that people see, and this is the thing that's out in the sun and the wind and the rain.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, if we're getting a facelift in your hand, I want to hear more. And I know one of the big issues I've always had since the NHS ceremoniously or unceremoniously destroyed my thyroid gland was kind of a form of lymphedema, I'm going to say, where just puffy and swollen. And one of the things that I've found with the face paddle, it's been really great at removing some of the puffiness and kind of giving me my face back, which is amazing. So thank you for that also.
Well, you're so beautiful and symmetrical and stunning, and you're just radiating health. I love that. I just want to chat about a couple things that you said where, like it's so incredible that we can be directed on a path of harming the body more through surgery. I'm fully aware that there are times in life when we need to go that road, but to simply understand the impact of adhesion and scar tissue in our body and what that does to flow. And then to understand that if we can just get to these root issues for basically all things in the body, we have a path and a process to really optimize our own health without having to go through such extreme measures. This is my biggest passion and purpose, is to empower people to understand this. Because yes, depending on where we're starting from, how old we are, the traumas, the impacts we've had in our past creates our story. But simply understanding the fascia system and recognizing that adhesion and scar tissue are really the root of all suffering. People talk about inflammation being the challenge. Inflammation is the response to the scar tissue and the adhesion. If we support inflammation properly, then we can actually rebuild our tissue in a healthful way, which is what this process is all about. However, I'm an athletic therapist, and I was trained in the RICE method: rest, ice, compression, elevation. You have an injury, you ice it, you stop that inflammation from accumulating, but that will now create an area of the body that has additional collagen and scar tissue impacting flow. Where conversely, if we can support trauma in the moment to support the inflammation through adding energy into the body, through heat, through movement, through breath, then we can actually rebuild the tissue in a healthy way, which creates a very different path forward in our body than the other way, where we allow scar tissue to develop. So it's just so fascinating that something so simple for people can take them in completely different avenue for how they're going to age. And I mean, we all know that, surgery is a big deal, right? It can really throw your body for a loop, and it takes time to heal. It's so invasive, and there can be a lot of things that can happen that are negative. And it's funny because, healing crises are real with this practice, right? Like we can have rib releases, which can be incredibly painful. We can have things coming to the surface, toxins from the past. We can have change in pain. And it's never fun in the moment. But compared to the other thing that we could end up having happen if we go different routes, it's such a small investment in time and rest required to take your body to a place where you are unraveling the past, you're undoing the past, you're melting through those layers to pull the deeper stuff up so that you can create more space in your body so you have better health, better flow, and more time inside yourself. You know, there's a space-time continuum, and as we go through time, we decrease in our internal space, where this process takes you backward through that. It takes the time out of your body, putting the space back in. So it's really an interesting concept. And you know, we're really the first generation of people doing this work. So to see what happens as regarding longevity, it will be very exciting to see in the future where those of us that have been creating a lifestyle with this practice, where we end up.
And I'm, of course, as you know, I'm in the your Facebook group, the Block Therapy Facebook group. There are people in there who are in their 80s, 90s, and 100. And we see with the before and after pictures and the stories. And I read those stories, I'm in awe of them, and they are so inspiring. I'm not going to say the name of the person just in case she doesn't want to be named, but there's a particular person in there who's in their 80s, and I'm just like reading her exploits and all the things she does with block therapy. It is just insane. When I first, when Dr. Margot got me to look at the block, I was like, oh my God, this is like what I do in my hand, because I've been a coach and therapist for the last 25 years at this point, and I do rapid transformation, not just fast for the sake of it, but fast because it's going to last and it will create a ripple effect into the rest of your life. And I felt that the block was a wooden version of that, where I feel like it puts a huge amount of power and control back into my hands. And I am now the person who can determine some of what is going to happen just by using this regular practice. And I know people often, when I mention about the shoulder, they go, oh my God, what program did you do? And what did you do? And I was like, you know what? Because it was so painful, my arm was on fire. And there are certain practices where you and Quinn, you're putting it under the arm. Literally, for me, just to touch it under the arm, I was like, whoa. And then to get into the position, I literally hit the ceiling. Meanwhile, you were on camera saying, smile and breathe. And I was like, really? Do you know what's going on here? So I did most of it in bed watching movies, because I couldn't have hard surface on hard surface and that. So the bed was now of course I could do my messages like this, and phone calls, etc. It's no problem. And it's amazing how different it is now. But it was like this put power into my hands, and me and my body now had a way to communicate with each other and work together in synergy. So I'm telling you, it's just like, and of course, I've met people in the group who've had their blocks for nearly 20 years. So it's almost like, I love it again. One-time investment, let's not mess about. And now you've got this as your health companion forever. And my God, I just love this thing so much. I can't even begin to tell you.
I would love it, Marilyn. You are such a powerful woman. It's clear just in the way that you communicate how passionate you are, how incredibly wise you are. Can you please share with our community what it is exactly that you do?
Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, I'm trained in about 20 different modalities. And I always say quite accidentally, because I was studying to be a chartered accountant, had no interest in this at all. What I'd been through in terms of my health had slightly prized my mind a little bit open to saying, well, okay, if the medical industry are not going to help me, they've destroyed my life and now they've just left me out to dry. I'm going to have to look at some stuff. But I wasn't fully present and there. And because I was very quiet and very shy, had very low confidence, could barely even speak to my own family, I signed up for a communication skills course, or so I thought. And then I get the joining instructions. It's like NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy, and this thing called HUNA, HUNA. I actually phoned them up and I said, this is not what I signed up for. I need a refund. And I tried to get my money back. So I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not doing this. Anyway, they said, come to the training. If you don't get massive value, which I'm rolling my eyes, you can get a refund at the end. So I go along and I've got a face like thunder, and it was a 7-day course. I'm like, you got several £1,000s of my money, and now you're going to waste 7 days of my time. Great. on about the third day, I was like, hang on a minute, they're not going to catch me out with their claws, because they were saying if you don't play full out, as in do the exercises, participate, it's not going to work. And I was like, oh no, you're not catching me out. I'm going to do everything you say. I'm going to prove that there's no way that floating above a metaphorical timeline can change your life. And I'll get my money back and I'll just forget all about this. And that was in October 2000. Just to put this into context, in September 2000, I contemplated suicide, as in I sat at my desk and I wrote a list of all the ways I could do it. And I ruled things out like the train, because I'm like, oh my God, I'd make everyone late for work. And and I was like, oh no, I can't tie a knot to save my life. Couldn't do that in brownies or guides. I can't do it now. So I'm crossing things off. But it was very logical and very like I narrowed it down to a few things that I would do. So I was not in a good space emotionally. To go through that training, come out the other side a mere 7 days later, I was like, this is like magic. So I then said, keep the money. I'm coming back for what you call the master practitioners. That was about 3 weeks later. And by the November, the first week of December, I distinctly remember somebody came up to me and she said, Marilyn, I can't imagine you being an accountant. The rage and the anger I felt inside in my head. I mean, I just gave her a passive aggressive smile, but I was like, who is she to tell me what she thinks I can and can't do? And I was like, why am I so angry about this? And I was so angry about it because she verbalized what I already started to know in my heart, that accountancy was not the route for me. And I had found something that felt like my calling. But hold on, I've just put nearly 3 years into this. What am I going to do? So the anger was like, I don't know what to do. And then suddenly there was a moment, and it was like I used to say to myself, well, who am I to do this and who am I to do that, and and then I taught myself out of stuff. So I was just about to go into that rhetoric, and a voice, it's the voice that I know now, the voice of my intuition, said, who are you not to? And even as I say it now, I get goosebumps. And I sat with that and I was like, who am I not to? Who am I not to? And I could not answer that question. So I went home and I said to my sisters, etc., I said, I'm giving up the chartered accountancy studies and I'm going to be a hypnotherapist instead. Now, of course, my older sister's a lawyer. She's like, have you been inducted into a cult? Who are these people? What have they done to you? But I was just so different. I just knew. And then over the years, I've had, I do NLP, all that stuff, past life regression, future life progression, soul plan reading, tarot. Of course, I went over to Hawaii to study Huna, because that's been a powerhouse in energy healing, photo reading, the accelerated learning, archetypes, you name it. Probably done it, because it was like being a kid in a candy store. I'm like, there is a whole new world here, and it is a world that does not require me to do things a bit like you said, that feel invasive and that are difficult and that are hard. We have such a laugh, even when I'm working with people who have really deep issues. When I say, yeah, we can turn this around in one day, they're like, really? But you haven't. And then they give me the story. I'm like, a day. So when I say that block therapy was like my 1 day breakthrough sessions, I'm not joking. And my logo since day one, it's sitting behind me, it's always been the water drop, the ripple effect, because I saw my work. That 1 day breakthrough session was a catalyst that would continue to ripple out into people's lives for years and decades to come. I was no longer there. They were now empowered to take forward what they had learned and apply it in their lives and share it with other people. And that brings me right back to this here. Your block therapy felt exactly like my 1 day breakthrough sessions. I am empowered with this in the same way that I like to think that I empower my clients to go forth, and they now are more working in alignment and in rapport with their mind, with their brain, with their emotions, and they're no longer held back by those things that even if they hadn't since childhood, past life, whatever, gone, sorted, now move forward and get on with your life in the way you want to live your life. And that's the same thing that block therapy did for me with my body, and all of the things that came as a result of that car crash when I was 20, because it gradually pulled the body out of alignment. And I had a problem here that was a problem then in the opposite hip, that was a problem in the opposite knee. They all felt like such separate issues. But there was this thing It's like, okay, when you hit this, everything else falls into place, and that it feels exactly what it's like with therapy. When you look at those negative emotions, anger, sadness, fear, guilt, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not capable enough, blow those out, resolve those, move them out of the body, out of the psyche, and suddenly you're like, whoa. I'm like, I'm back. And I was like, what are we going to do next? And I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in my 20s, and that was a photo reading that sorted that out. But again, when I was like, oh my God, all is not lost. I am not going to be like this for the next 70 years. I was just like, okay, I need to know more about this. I need to find out about it. And I need to tell everybody who's willing to listen. I don't push on closed doors anymore. Not interested. If somebody says to me, I don't think hypnotherapy works, I'm like, you're absolutely right. It probably won't work for you. Next, I'm gone. I don't need to have that conversation. But when I meet someone who's like, I'm like, I know something that could help you, this, or it was the mindset, come and see me. So that in a nutshell is how I went from chartered account study to be a chartered accountant to, all of the wonderful modalities that I use to this day. And, working with clients globally. I started working online in 2005 by telephone back then, because one of my questions in life to myself is, I wonder what would happen if. And so with block therapy, I was like, I can't do this thing that this woman called Deanna is telling me to do on the floor, because me and my shoulder are not getting back up. So I was like, I wonder what would happen if I do this in bed. I wonder what would happen if I do this when I'm sitting on the sofa. And it was that same question that expanded the therapy. I wonder what would happen if I did everything that I do in person on the phone or online. And it just blew my mind. And I was like, I know that healing works and travels. I could send healing and Huna to somebody in Australia. They will feel it. They'll message me and go, Marilyn, today. And I'm like, why are you asking? And then they'll tell me exactly what I did. And they got no idea what I'm doing here in the UK. It's amazing. So if I love the word transformation. That's one of my favorite words, of course. But next around is empowerment. And this for me is, I think, why I so also fell in love with block therapy, because it so reminded me of the work that I do, but I'm on the energetic and mental and emotional side. And this, I love that symbol. It brings it all together with the physical. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell in terms of who I am and what I do.
Wow. And I didn't know that about where you were in your past at such a dark space. And I mean, first of all, imagine this world without you. But secondly, listening to you express all of this and how, I mean, for you to be in that moment of, suicidal thinking to that quickly being on the other side of that, like the amount of hope that will give to people that are struggling, that's huge. Because I mean, I've been there in those very, very dark spaces when you don't think that, you're worthy or that you'll ever find your way out. And yet to know that really quickly you can. And it is really like, if you're in a big, huge, dark cave, one little match can help to start to light the way. And thank you for sharing that. That is so brave and exciting for the world to know that through the physical body, through trainings that you're suggesting, people can very quickly come out of that deep, dark hole and they can find a light and they can keep walking forward with solutions as long as you're open. So amazing, Marilyn. Thank you. That's just
No, thank you. I mean, I didn't expect to have this conversation. I'm always delighted to have this conversation, because when I say to people, oh gosh, got to say trigger warning nowadays, but I was abused from the age of 7 to 17. When I say that to people, one of the first things they say is like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm like, it's cool. I could say it as easy as like, yeah, do you want a glass of water? Not because I don't, it's not serious. Don't get me wrong. It is. It just doesn't have any energy for me anymore. And one of the things people say after, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, is I'd never have guessed. And I'm like, that's exactly my point. You don't have to have the things that have happened to you stamped on your forehead or defining who you are and how you move through the world. And block therapy is exactly the same. You do not have to have all of your old adhesions scrunching you up and keeping you hostage. You can resolve those and you can release those, and you could see someone and have no idea about all of the old traumas that body has been through, because you found a way to release them, and you found a way to bring things back into alignment and bring life into the body. Because one of the, I mean, I've no idea, but when I think about my shoulder, for example, or the ankle, I think of going past those Italian shops where you have the meats, dried meats hanging in the window, and that's the kind of the way that I imagine it must look inside of there. And block therapy brings a life to that, and working with the emotions injects a whole new kind of energy into the body. And so now you don't look like your trauma because you're not. It doesn't have to define you. And I think for me, that's what's really exciting about all of the wonder. And I was like, when I first met you, I was like, how the hell did I not know about block therapy? How could this have passed me by? Where have you been? But then you're everywhere. So I'm like, okay, but I know there are many people who still don't know about block therapy and about all of this wonderful stuff. But I was that person for 20 odd years. But I'm like, oh my God, now I know. I know a little bit about the fascia. You know, I just imagined it like a skin under this skin, and that if it got stuck and tangled and all the rest of it, it would naturally then make everything around it stuck and tangled. But I'd never given it that much thought. And now it's just everything. It's just everything. And it's just like, whoa. So to live in a world in this time, in this place, in this space, like you said, where we have all of this at our fingertips, I'm like, man, we are so lucky. We can deal with the mind. And I think one of the reasons I didn't have all the emotions coming up when I started with block therapy is because I've spent the last 25 years, working with the emotions. But one of the things I noticed in the group, when people were coming into block and they maybe haven't yet been on an emotional journey, people are blocking, they're hitting up onto emotions, the tears and all the rest of it. But then beautifully, it starts to leave the body. And that part of the body that was stuck, because I do believe that, certain organs are related to certain emotions, and the body can hold emotion in, like when somebody's like, oh, you're a pain in the neck, they often have neck ache, for example. It's just, seriously, Deanna, this stuff is just so magical. And I want everyone in the world to have the opportunity to be able to do this, including children. I'm like, oh my God, if children could, if I had a piece of advice for anyone, when I was in my 20s, I think the reason the whiplash and not being treated properly didn't catch up with me as soon as it did, I had about 7 years of freedom before it all started to catch up with me, because we're resilient. People on rugby fields and all the rest of it, throwing themselves around in the gymnasium, in the gym. If people were blocking in their teens and in their 20s and in their 30s, I actually suspect so some of those legacy injuries wouldn't necessarily catch up with them in their 40s, 50s, 60s, etc. And they would probably do a bit of emotional releasing on the way. So yeah, I love this stuff.
Oh, wow. Again, thank you so much for sharing. Like, you just really brought me to my story where in my 20s, when I was in my very, very dark space, so 20s were really bad, late teens, early 20s, very, very bad for me. Then when I was 30 years old, this was when this whole journey began. And I remember that, especially as I was waking up, I would look back to that very damaged young woman that I was, with shame, with regret, with guilt, with all the things. But then by the time I hit 37 years old, so now I'm 7 years into the practice and I'm diving in and I'm understanding more. I remember there was a moment when I looked back to that damaged young woman, and instead of having those negative feelings about her, I felt this incredible sense of compassion and appreciation for what I had gone through, because it was that person that birthed this. And if it wasn't for the dark nights of the soul, and I had many, many, many of them, I don't believe for a moment that this would have happened. So to finally have enough space and time to look back with that realization, then I could be proud instead. I don't even like that word proud, but then I could feel her from a different space than the judgment that I had. And so now I don't walk around feeling damaged. I mean, I remember saying, oh my God, I'm so damaged. And I mean, then I carried that with me, that forever the rest of my life will be damaged because of my actions and behaviors from the past. But then I cleared the way and I don't see it that way anymore. And that was such a revelation and a breath that I could take. And now I could look into the future with hope and joy, as opposed to hiding and trying to mask who I was because of that yuckiness that surrounded her. So thank you for sharing that too. Again, like you just really brought that forward for me, that we can view life from such a different perspective when we have the tools, when we can find those adhesions that have locked us into the trauma that had happened in our past, and we can let them go. Again, the physical changes, but for me more so the emotional and mental and spiritual changes, because it just, again, it brought me to God in a very different way. It brought me to myself in a very different way, and the understanding of how that is all intimately connected, so that I could move forward with, again, just appreciation and freedom to express, instead of I'm damaged, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve to have love, or whatever, the story was. So thank you. That was beautiful what you shared. Wow.
Wow. And I think also for me, I guess for other people, because so much of block therapy centers around the breath, meditation, martial arts, prayer, huna, doesn't matter what it is,
Yeah.
oftentimes centers around the breath. So I do believe that even if people weren't seeing block therapy as some sort of spiritual practice or anything like that, it brings you back to yourself, because you are focusing on the breathing and not just your diaphragmatic breathing, clearing
Yeah.
out those toxins. So even if your headspace isn't necessarily thinking about the spiritual and the centered, the breath work that is at the heart of this, it does something, I believe, to the body and brings it all back into alignment, which again is a beautiful thing. It's just amazing. And all of this from a piece of, because somebody laughed. I mean, I will tell you, actually, it's a bit rude. Not rude in that you're going to have to edit it out. But they said, sorry, you paid what for a bit of wood? And I was like, oh, let me just stop you right there. And then I told them about the shoulder, and they're like, okay, where do I get one?
And also
There's
the fact that
power in that
it
bit of
comes with
wood.
education, not just the piece of wood.
Exactly. It's just the way they said it. It's like, what, you paid that for a bit of wood? And I was like,
Oh, I've heard it
it's
all, believe
prestigious.
me. Well, you know what? This conversation took a very different turn than I expected, which I just love. And again, your vulnerability and seeing who you are today, and how powerful you are, and the work that you're doing. And you're standing on stages moderating with some of the top people in the world in health, and you're the one. Like, I'm so impressed with you and everything that you've done. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to share.
Oh, you're most welcome. And that's why I did San Diego, and I did Canada as well, and I did Florida with the event that one of the events that you're talking about. And this time round, just a couple of weeks ago, if you're watching this in real time, somebody had said about the fascia. And I'm like, so you've got Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, Michael Beckwith, and load of scientists, etc., and all the rest of it. And I was on the stage, and I'm the moderator, I'm doing the Q&A, I'm interviewing all of these wonderful speakers. And I said, yeah, and so they answered the question about the fascia and all the rest of it. And I said, yes, one other thing I would suggest, if you really want to look into fascia, is you look at block therapy. And then sort of just elegantly, but a friend of yours was in the audience at that time, and I ran into her the next day. She went, oh, you're the moderator, the MC, you're the one who mentioned block therapy from stage when Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton, etc. are talking. I was like, yeah, because that word fascia, it's like fascia and block therapy are best friends. And so there were people watching from around the world, because it was also being live streaming. So just landing that little point, some people will pick up that nugget and go, what did she say? Block what? Block therapy. And they'll go and Google it. Others, it might pass them by, but I'm guessing they'll hear it again when it's time for it to land, and they'll go forth and look at it. Because for me now, there can't be a conversation for me about fascia without mentioning block therapy. So yeah, it's kind of cool. And from someone who was quiet and shy and could barely speak to my own family, to walk into a room and see the 15,000, 1,500 chairs, whatever it is, lined up, no longer am I filled with fear. I'm like, yeah, bring it, let's go. I'm
Ah,
so excited.
that's amazing. Well, Marilyn, I want to thank you so much. And for all who are listening, your community, my community, this has been a really fun conversation. And I want to have many more with you going forward in the future.
Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. I absolutely loved it. We both of us had no idea what to expect. It's like, let's just see what unfolds. And what's really beautiful is Deanna has also sent me one of these, not this one, this is mine, but I also have one of these wonderful face paddles to give away to someone. Now, previously I had said that you've got to have done the block therapy starter program in order to be in the prize draw. You've just heard in this wonderful interview that that literally changed a few days ago. So now it's open to everyone. But yeah, there's going to be an opportunity where you can win one of these. And Deanna, when these first came out, they were like gold, well, they still are in a way. They're like gold dust. There was a waiting list, and then the waiting list closed, and people were on a waiting list to get onto the waiting list. There was that much demand for them. So,
Yeah, that was
so
an
yeah,
interesting journey.
I can imagine, and they're all over the group. So you mentioned face paddle. Somebody goes, "Where did you get it? You know, is it still open?" It was like, no, you know, because it went in waves. And I remember when you said, right, the next wave, your email is coming, and then you've got, what is it, 5 days or something to say if you want it, and then if you don't, your name comes out and somebody else goes in. It was like, oh my God, the drama
Oh, I know.
to get
We're all
it.
caught
But
up now, though, so thank God. We actually literally had to build a factory, and now the factory is built, and now we're pumping things out. So we're all good. But it was a bit of a journey of like, how are we going to do this? And honestly, like when we started this, it was a little test. So we just sent it out to our community. We had 500, and I'm like, let's see how the community likes it. We sold out in 3 hours. And I had no idea that was going to be the response. So then, because we didn't have our factory built at that time, we were making them from this other place, and it was a very slow make. So I think a number of months later, we had another 500. And then we spent over a year building our factory. So it took a while, but now they're getting pumped out, and now we can supply the world.
wonderful. So I haven't yet decided what the there's going to be a question of some sort. It might be a question about something that was in this interview. So watch this space, and if you would like to win one of these, it doesn't cost you anything. I'm even going to cover your postage, so you can win one of these wonderful face paddles. I love it. It's definitely, as I said, is it's freed up. My face feels less puffy. So yeah, this could be yours. So watch this space. And thank you so much, Deanna, for sending it over.
Oh, my pleasure. And of course, you won't just get the paddle, you'll also get the program with it so that you can really dive in and understand how to use it for your whole body. So thank you so much, Marilyn. This has been an absolute pleasure. Always love chatting with you, and I look forward to many more future discussions with you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Have a wonderful day.